Be advised, the opinions and views of the hosts and guests do not reflect those of the station.
Hi, good evening. Welcome to the June Alma Show, and this is June Alma, welcoming you to another wonderful evening of enlightening and intelligent conversations. And especially tonight is a very special night because we dedicate this first and last live tape live episode for the book of my mother, which she would like to promote and she would like to talk about. And on top of this, we are also celebrating the 80th birthday of my mother, but she would like to be very quiet about it and commemorate her milestone with the review and the promotion of her book, The Nation's Journey to Greatness. So please do stay tuned with us because we have very important guests tonight. We are lucky to have the top brass of personalities in education. We have all four of them, and they will talk about the book of my mother, and which she has dedicated to the nation, summarizing all of her 50 years of service to the nation. And so, before we continue, I'd like to introduce to you again my co-host, Dr. Chelihano. Che?
Yes, good evening, everybody. This is Doc Chelihano. We're in for a special treat because this book is sure to be a bestseller, The Nation's Journey to Greatness. And for once, I am also in good company because we have two doctors with us. June?
Yeah, we actually have four of them, but they are PhDs, not MDs, as
Yeah.
you are. But nevertheless, we are very fortunate because we have the intellectuals with us tonight. And before, I'd like to introduce my guests tonight. For the first segment, we have with us, joining us, is the chairman of the COCOPEA, which is the Coordinating Council for Private Education Association. The chairman is Dr. Paulo Campos. Good evening,
Good evening.
Dr.
Good evening,
Campos.
June.
We
Good
are very
evening, Dr. Che.
thank you so much for joining us in the show. We are fortunate to have you. Thank you. And we also have the executive director of FAPE, which is Funds for Assistance to Private Education, which incidentally is the distributor of the book, The Nation's Journey to Greatness. So we have with us the executive director, Dr. Carolina Porio. Good evening, ma'am.
ma'am.
Good evening.
Thank you for joining us tonight. So tell us, how have you been, can you tell us how you have experienced, your associations with my mother in all the years that she has worked for government? For all of 50 years, over 50 years, she has dedicated her life to service for government. So I'm sure you have encountered, in all those years,
Do you want me to
experiences.
respond first?
Yes,
Or
Dr.
the lady
Porio.
goes first?
Dr. Porio, or whoever would like to.
Ladies first, though.
Oh, okay,
Oh,
okay. She was one time as DepEd Secretary. She was also concurrently the chair of the PEAC, which is the Private Education Assistance Committee, the governing board of the organization that I represent. So she was also the PEAC chair at that time. And we all know how relentless and how persevering she is in all her projects. And that's how much I know about him. That is why when the idea of writing a book came across, and then the board said yes right away.
There you go.
So, we're very thankful because I know that, my mother has been for the longest time, wanting to really write a book. and except that she has not really had the time to do it because she has been active in government service, both as a practitioner in education and also as a policymaker. And so we are grateful to the FAPE for supporting her in this endeavor. And I understand also your chairman is Dr. Brother Luis Stroh,
Yeah.
who is really the publisher of the book.
Yes. In fact, he was the one who suggested that she writes a book about her experience and insights, having served 5 presidents.
Yes. So
Oh yeah. Five
Yeah.
imagine,
presidents,
yeah,
huh?
she served
Yeah, yeah,
5
yeah.
decades.
Yeah.
5
she-
decades.
yeah. So in this book, she really, puts together her invaluable experience as firsthand, working with the 5
Yeah,
presidents of the country.
And that's a strong indication that there's no politics involved in this case.
No,
5 presidents.
5 presidents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What
actually.
about Dr.
Yeah.
Campos' reaction?
Well, in private education, Dr. Valisno was, during the time I had been active in the associations, she was the presidential advisor on education. And so usually when there were concerns, private education is generally plagued with concerns like freezing of tuition fees and all of these populist demands, which schools really have a difficult time meeting. Dr. Valisno would be the intermediary to the executive body, especially to the president, for our concerns. And notably, when she became Secretary of Education, when Secretary Lapus stepped down for that interim, she was able to finish the manual of regulation for basic education in the few months that she was in office. I don't know if people know that, but there was a manual of education manual for basic education that had been languishing wherever in some corner of the bureaucracy, but when she took office, she didn't just finish this book. She also finished the manual
manual.
of regulation.
Oh.
So
So that explained the rumor that she never slept.
maybe
Really?
Rumor from you alone.
probably
From you only.
she worked day and night for the few months she was in office.
Oh, right.
Well, yeah, and also she was mentioning in the book that there has to be, she was pushing for private sector partnership, right? So you guys being in the private sector
Yeah.
is,
PPP. They call that PPP now. It's
Private-public partnership.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
buzzword now in the education circle.
Yeah, in fact, there are many things in the book that is, shall we say, a primer for anyone who wants to get involved in policy making. Like one of the very first chapters here, she says, well, politics is a reality. It is like the medium we operate in. There are interest groups, there's the stakeholders have their interests, and to talk of education and say, let's keep politics out of education is like saying, well, let's take our consciousness out of our mind and forget who we are. So it is not reality. And so talking about PPP in the current policy issues coming up on K-12, PPP, which is in this book, has been a major focus for private education interacting with the Department of Education, especially because we will be impacted by the implementation of 11th and 12th grade. We will not have any students for 2 years, and in fact, it's not 2 years, it's actually 5 years, because you look at it this way: if you have a 4-year tertiary program, which is 4 years in colleges, so in 2016, 2017, there will be no first-year students.
At least not from the public schools. Because
Well,
of K-12?
no. Because
Or
K-12 will be
including
in all,
private
that
schools?
will be
Ah,
alone.
right,
Include,
right,
so there will
In
be no
tertiary
first-year
institutions.
students.
Okay.
Then the next school year, there will be no first-year and second-year students. Then the year after that, there will be first year students, but there will be no second and third year students. So this is like a tidal wave that will roll through the educational system. And for publicly funded institutions like SUCs and LUCs, they can lean on public funds to tide them over. But for private education, most of whom are just funded by tuition, this is like an extinction event.
Yeah.
It's an extinction level event.
Because of those 2 years.
Yeah, but we had a study where we projected that over those 5 years, it's 5 years because the gap, it's like a...
I mean, the 2 vacant years that are
like,
going to be...
since you're a doctor, it's like an embolism that's going... Yeah, right.
Higher and higher.
Yeah, so
more
exactly.
dangerous, yeah.
So we projected that private education will incur a shortage of 190 billion over the 5 years in revenue. So many schools will
That's a
not
lot.
survive. So going to the book and what Dr. Porio is pointing out, public-private partnerships is one of the things she discusses there, which is now an important policy discussion and which has been accepted by the DepEd as a means for a win-win situation where the DepEd the private sector can help the DepEd bridge the necessary infrastructure for the 11th and 12th grade for at least a period of time until they can build the necessary schools, school buildings and the teachers, etc.
How will FAPI cope with that, ma'am?
No.
Doctora.
Actually, in this book, she discussed extensively one form of PPP which is now being
There you go.
implemented, and this is the GASPE.
Yeah.
This is GASPE is
The friendly ghost?
No.
Oh, that's Casper.
It's
Yeah.
a law. It's a law. It's a law. It's government assistance to students and teachers in private
GASPE.
education.
Yeah, yes.
And one of the programs there is ESC,
Which
another
is?
acronym, Educational
Educational
Service Contracting. So this
Okay.
is one of the biggest PPP in education in the world. That's how I understood it. And it is discussed here very extensively.
That's
So
pretty cool.
this is a scheme whereby about 1 million students from the public schools are bused to the private schools with the government footing the
public
bill.
fund.
Yeah.
okay.
So it's an education service contracting.
So the funds come from the private sector?
Government.
Government.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's good
But it's the private sector that
Uh-huh.
educates the children,
Yes.
and these are the excess
transition.
Yeah.
students coming from the public
So that
schools,
is
They're
supposed to
called the
tide you
aisle.
over.
They're called the aisle students.
from the public
Aisle
schools.
students because the congested classrooms, the idea
I
is the
see.
students who really are just crammed in and have no more space are given the option to enroll in a private
Yes.
school, and there is like a subsidy that is portable. So what
Yeah.
would have been spent by the Department of Education for these students, they're allowed to transfer to the private school. I think
There you go.
outside the NCR it's 6,500 and it's 10,000.
You're talking about the tuition fees?
Yeah, that's
Six
what
thou- oh.
that's what
Subsidy. They
that's
call
Oh,
it
the
what would be
subsidy.
paid to the
Laking
private
Bagyo.
Yeah, the
school.
subsidy. Oh,
Well,
that's nice to hear.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah.
As long as the PPP does not become pera para kay pare.
No.
No, well,
That's very important.
well, the idea is to expand this program so that when the 11th and 12th grades come, into being,
They
and
will be covered.
and the tertiary schools now will not have enrollment, then the gap in one and the excess in the other can be matched.
It's like bridge financing, bridge
Yeah.
enrollment.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
So
Sort of.
it's a
Sort
of. Nice.
win-win. It's the stakeholders will work together to deliver the program.
There you go.
So there you go. So that's very nice to hear that at least you have methods and processes that are in place in the transition.
And to go back to the book,
Yeah,
your mother
everything's there.
talked about it. I guess it's an
Yes.
idea that's not
great.
new.
Yeah.
It's been there for quite some time, and she talks about it.
Somebody
and,
put it in black and white.
and it's only,
Yeah.
but now because education, I think in many places has become an important policy consideration because there's a saying, the ultimate resource is the human mind. Yeah, you can have whatever, but at the end of the day, it's the people is is really the key.
Yeah, let's
So
again-
education
yeah.
has become
Yeah.
an important
Resource.
policy or an important government function that now is valued.
Mhm. Yeah. There you go.
So we have, please do stay with us because we will have more interesting topics to talk about on education. In the meantime, we shall be pausing for a break. Stay tuned.